I also would like to acknowledge the people that are working in this project, people from Sandia and also from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So today I'm going to talk about a code that we have worked in the last 4 years. It's called TChem-atm. Basically, TChem means thermochemistry. And the main goal of this code is to compute the contribution of gas and particles in 3D models. This can be climate models, or it can be like CFD codes. The original TChem was for combustion and catalysis. And then through a collaboration with the TChem project and Eagle projects, we moved to atmospheric chemistry. So basically, we have a reaction mechanism, and we would like to know how this reaction mechanism can affect the 3D simulation, so TChem computes these contributions. As I mentioned, the TChem is a performance portable code, uses COCOS. The main goal of TChem is to compute source terms and Jacobians, which means the solver for time integration is an external party, and we don't work on that, but we construct the interfaces. So what our code does is takes information from reaction mechanisms, which is a list of reaction species, parses that information, put that information in data objects that we can access, and then we can implement these source terms of Jacobian matrices. And then we rely on external parties for the time integrations. The external parties that we use for ODE solvers are Tines, Sundials, and COCOS kernels. And today, mostly I'm going to talk about some work that we have done with the Sundials interface of COCOS. So what exactly we are solving in TChem, TChem-atm? So we are just solving a system of ordinary differential equations where we solve equations for gas species and also for particles, but inside of the particles we track the composition of the particles. So this is the system that we actually solve, and then where the right-hand side of these equations are the net production rates, and the net production rates are computed using the contribution of each reaction, and then each reaction is expressed as I show in this part right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, where this constant right here is the reaction constant, and then this is one of the typical reaction constants. So what our code does is just takes different expressions for these reaction constants and constructs these right-hand sizes. One of the key parts in our code is we construct what we call kinetic model data, where we put all the information from these reaction mechanisms in a data object that we can use in our implementation. And then this object contains all the information relevant for the construction of these reaction sizes, such as reaction types, reaction products, kinetics, all of this information that is key. So here is a typical example using our code. So in this plot we have concentrations and then over time, so it's very simple, and then we have 4 species. For this type of systems we need an implicit solver, and in most of the cases we are using a BDF solver. And as I mentioned, these solvers are external to our project. In this case we are using Tines. In this particular example, another example using our code is this plot where I show gas plus aerosols, where aerosols are just small particles that are flowing around. So if you look, all these plots, these are just concentrations, and then over time, and then in here we are comparing just GPU and CPU, just to make sure that both implementations are working correctly. And then we compare with another code, making sure that we are not making mistakes. For this particular example, we are using the Sundial's BDF solver with an sparse solver, a GMRES solver. Okay, so now I'm going to go through more details. In our code, we relied on hierarchical parallelism or team parallelism, and there are mainly two sources of parallelism. So the big source of parallelism for us, it is we compute many instances of either an initial value problem or random size or Jacobian evaluations. And then inside of this like main kernel or this main parallel 4, we have small problems, and then these small problems is the place where we relied on team parallelism, where we basically have loops for number of reactions or number of species, as I show in this pseudocode, where basically it's very simple. We read the information from files, we create these data objects, we sync these data objects to the device for the gas and for the particle phase. We construct the team policy, and then we just launch these big kernels for the random size evaluation in this case, in this example. So it is a very simple code, kind of simple code, and we rely on Cocos. So I want to show you some examples on performance. So what I am using here, what I'm saying as CB05 plus simple, this is just the configuration. This is a combination of gas plus particles. Basically, it is air pollution plus particles that transfer like mass from the gas phase to the particle phase. Most of these examples, all these examples are done in Frontier using the one NVIDIA GPU and in permuter next using an NVIDIA GPU, and also we did some runs on the CPU. Most of the examples that I will show are using the Sandia board, BDF solver, and then I'm going to change the number of particles in my test problem. So here are some of the first results. So what you see here in color is just the whole time. So we ran one example for 10 iterations, and then we took the time. I'm using just one evaluation because in our application it's very important to run one case just to make sure that everything works correctly. And then we can move to the next stage when we run with multiple. So what we did in here was we only change the team and the vector size in our team policy, and we just measured the time, and the goal was to find the best combination of team and vector sizes. Because we are only running one sample, and this is like, so this is only one sample, and then the key parallelism in here is actually the nested. You will see like most of the good times, which are the dark ones, are when we are using like a either big team size or vector length. One interesting thing is like when we use the Cocos Auto, the Cocos Auto actually gives a really good value, very close to the mean volume, which for us, I really like this because we don't need to worry about these parameters. One interesting thing was when we tested this in the NVIDIA and in the AMD, we saw very similar behaviors. So that's also nice for us, so we don't have to worry about the back end. And then, as I mentioned, because we are using just one evaluation, it seems like as a default, we can use either a Cocos Auto or just use a big team size. So in this plot, what we are doing is each of these dots correspond to one experiment. And then in this axis, in the y-axis, this is the total time. So again, this is only 10 iterations. And then we divide by the number of particles. So what we would like to see in these plots, it is as we increase the number of particles in our example, which translates to a bigger right-hand side, is we would like to see that the time decreases. We can see that that time decreases very well for the sparse solver, which but then if you look the other lines, these lines right here, which are the dense solvers, we don't see that. So we learned that after we use random sizes bigger than 100, bigger than 200 particles, we need to switch to an sparse solver. And the main reason of this is because as I showing here in this plot, again, time per particle against number of particle, and then this plot, this line right here is the Jacobian. The Jacobian evaluation becomes very expensive after we have like 10 particles, 100 particles, sorry. And 100 particles translate to a random size of about 500. So another important part that we tried was actually trying these experiments in the A100 and the AMI 215, so NVIDIA GPU, AMD GPU plus CPU. And then we found like comparing the two GPUs, the performance is very similar. And for the CPU, we found like the performance on the GPUs better if we increase our random sizes, which makes sense and which make us happy because it means we are using to find the resources and also the third parties. So finally, we did one experiment where we try a batch dense solver. As I mentioned, we only try one run, one experiment, but we wish to use the dense solver in particular for problems when we relied on like many evaluations. This is running the code with a 3D solver. And we found like if we use one leak, we got bigger time. And then as we use 1,000, the time per sample actually is smaller, which is what we expected. This plot right here, this map, this plot right here, it shows you one interesting thing. In our previous experiments, we found like we need to use like big team sizes because we are using leak equal 1. But in here we found like the sweet spot is actually in the middle. One interesting thing when we use 1,000 as a leak size was, in this case, the Cocos Auto didn't give us like the best performance, actually give something over the mean. So this is interesting, but it means we need to rely more on, see how we can tune actually these two parameters. And finally, what we learned from this exercise is we get similar performance in the AMD and the NVIDIA and the AMD GPU. Cocos Auto actually is, it gives us a good performance if we use leak equal 1, which is important for us because we do a lot of testing using just one sample. We learned like we need sparse solvers in particular for very long random sizes, which makes sense. But the dense solver was actually pretty good at small random sizes. What was critical in the dense solver was the Jacobian evaluation, and mainly it's because we have a serial loop when we compute this Jacobian. Finally, I just would like to thank the source of funding, which is mainly the Sandia internal resources. Thank you.
All right, we have time for a couple questions. Do you have anyone? Yeah?
Which integral scheme do you use? We are using a PDF solver, and then we are relying, for these particular examples, we are relying on the Sundial's C-board, and then we are using a BDF solver, and then in the BDF solver, you can pick a different solver for the internal linear solver. And then we tried like the sparse, one sparse option, which is the GMRes, and then a dense solver. Does this make sense? So you are using solvers an implicit solver, yes.
If there are no more questions, then let's thank Oscar again.